Hello. Hi, how are you? This is Rinal Parikh. I'm one of the board members with Rittenhouse Square Fine Art Show, and I would like to welcome you to this month's 5 o'clock club. And I'm going to share my studio practices, some of my artwork, and then we'll work on little painting and you can learn about my technique. And I'll talk to you about how my work being Indian folk art has transferred into the contemporary uh, world and what I have collected and how my work is influenced by Indian folk art. So let's go around and start with the studio tour now. Come on. There we go. That's my beautiful window. I know you have heard many times talking about my backyard, and yes, that's where the source of inspiration comes for most of my painting. And as you can see, there's nothing, there's trees, lots of birds, animals. Oftentimes there's a lot of deers too. Today's not the day. Bunnies and all sorts of creatures. So yes, this is what I see from my studio when I'm painting. The first painting I wanted to show you is called Pink, and it's a painting of flamingo, and it's done with gouache on handmade paper. This particular paper is khadi paper. When I'm working on with gouache paint, the paper I often use is a handmade paper, and for the bigger pieces I prefer khadi paper. The difference between khadi paper and the regular handmade paper is khadi is weaved cotton rag paper. So it has that natural textures, weaving texture to the paper. So if you look up close, it looks like a tapestry. It looks like a piece of paper which is painted and framed. The style that inspires this kind of work is kalamkaris and varli, and that is another reason why I like to use handmade paper for this kind of work, because in India traditionally this kind of folk arts were used to create textile designing. So when you see my painting, oftentimes people resembles that, oh, it looks like textile, or have you ever thought of making scarf out of it or fabric out of it? And that is the reason, because the style is often seen in Indian textile, but I use them in the painting, and doing so I like to use handmade paper, and which gives that textile feeling to my painting. The paper that I use is imported from India, and they do come unfinished, and this is another thing that I love to share, and exposes the unfinished paper. You can see if you look from, oh, there we go. And I'll show you from the far, and you can see how uneven the paper is. Oh, there you go. So I like to expose the unfinished, edges of the paper, because I feel like the work is so symmetrical, so intricate, so fine, versus uneven, like bumpy and lumpiness of the paper, and the unfinished edges create a lot of interest to my work, and I think it's opposite attracts, and that's the philosophy behind that. I float the painting on golden mat, so it becomes the edges becomes part of the painting as well. So that's one of my favorite pieces. It's called Flamingo, and here's my koi. These are all created last year for my solo show at Albright College. The show was about the interpretation of Indian folk art, folk traditions, and that's part of it. Actually, Shilpi Chandra said a very interesting fact about this painting. Shilpi Chandra is the curator and historian for Asian art. And what she pointed out, which I never even thought of it, like that in Indian folk art, the flowers are always closed, whereas in mine, some of them are closed, some of them are open. It actually brings it to, makes it much more modern than the traditional style of folk art. So that's the how it departs from traditional to the contemporary painting. Here's another style of painting that I portray often, and that is Varley style of painting. I create them mainly on canvas, and I built my surface with a lot of sand and hay, sometimes glass bead, fabric, to create that stucco effect. And traditionally in India, these paintings are done on the wall, specifically outside wall of the houses, to decorate the houses. So to create that stucco effect, I do paint them on canvas, but with heavy texture, stucco-like structure to it. And then I paint my painting with acrylic. And the paint in India, this particular form of art is practiced by women's in the tribal part of India called Varli, and they come together just like a book club. They will come together in the afternoon and paint each other's house, and they paint whatever they see around, and I paint whatever I see around, whatever makes me happy. And here you can see that this is my newest painting, and this is about the fall. And you can see that I just showed you my backyard, and this is from my backyard. The tree, the leaves are falling, we have a Ridley Creek running by, and it makes me happy. And this is what I see, and that's the painting here. And you can see a lot of texture, like there's sand. This one doesn't have fabric, but a lot of my paintings does have fabric in them as well.
There's a question. Do you cover the entire canvas with the dark texture before you add any detail painting?
Right. So first I create the structure, the stucco base for my painting, and then I paint them with the base paint. Oftentimes the base paint do look black and white or brown and white, but there's a lot of colors in them. And then I go on top, I paint my subject with white or black acrylic paint. This one has a lot of fabric, like you can see here. Right there. And this is another, this is the same, we have a willow cherry tree in the front, and this is how it looks during when it rains. So the painting is called April Shower, and this one is falling in love with fall because it's just so beautiful out there, so colorful. And to bring the color, I have added flowers, even though you don't see this many flowers in fall, but to me, when I see flower, I associate them with colors. And that's why leaves are falling, but the tree is covered with flower to put you in the mood of the fall colors.
Okay, there's another question. How many different brush types and sizes?
So here's my favorite brushes. Here we go. So my favorite, the whole painting is done with 0. Everything is done with the 0. I love using 2 00 brush. I have here 50 brush. It's not that, can you see up close? No. Here, let me put it this way. Like, that's my 0. The whole painting is done with this. This is 5th of a 0 brush. This is 3rd of a 0 brush, and where's my yeah, where's my 00? But I go as about, like, the most brush I'll use is number 2, and oftentimes I'll have 4 in my palette, but I don't have anything more than 2 is the one. This is another brush that I often use, is number 2. And they're all round. I love Princeton. They're not paying for the promotion, but that's the favorite brand I normally use for my painting. And the last one I wanted to show before I start the demo is my diving duck. And this is from Ridley Creek. Me and my kids go out for walking, and we love seeing duck diving in, and we make that noise dubuk while it goes, and here you are. And to me, when I see just the top, it looks like a water lily, a lotus flower. But when you see in, here is my duck. And I just love it. It just makes me so happy to see them. And, you know, the painting made me happy as well. All right. So here we have, today I'm going to work on my chameleon. Here. So I started with, this is handmade paper. I painted the base, and I was going to start working on some details on the painting today. Why chameleon? The reason behind the chameleon is all my subjects has some sort of personal stories to them. And growing up in India, we used to have a lot of chameleon in our yard, and they always creeped me out. So yeah, I wasn't a big fan of it. I'm still not a big fan of it, but it was intriguing. The color changing, all the textures, they were so beautiful, but the gross at the same time. And I was always, I didn't know, sometimes I'll laugh at it, sometimes I was amazed by it, and sometimes I was just like, oh boy, I can't do it. And that's why I thought it would be a fun idea to paint some chameleon. So I did study a lot about the chameleon, like their body. I read a lot about them, and I saw a lot of reference photograph on the web to create the body. And again, like my paintings are not they're not realistic. They are real looking. So here's my chameleon, and I'm gonna work on it a little bit to show you how I do the coloring. So I created a base first, and here we go. So I'm going to start with my zero brush. The one thing about my paint that I wanted to share is these are gouache paints. As you can see, I'm not a big fan of mixing colors, so I normally use, my palette is pretty vivid, and these are my paint that I wanted to share. In all my paintings, I normally use two kinds of gouache. These are regular gouache, and these are acrylic gouache. And the reason is the acrylic gouache, when it dries, it creates that flat base, versus the regular gouache is like a watercolor. It does a lot of mixing. So when I'm working on feathers and fine details where I want them to blend, I use regular gouache. And when I want them to be solid and don't blend, I use my acrylic gouache. And I'll show you all examples of them. So here. So I'm going to work on the eye for that. The black is acrylic gouache versus the most other colors are regular gouache. And I love to start my painting with eyes. I think the eyes sets the tone and the mood for the painting, and it makes the subject live. So I feel like once the eyes is done properly and to my liking, the rest of the body goes very smoothly for me, and normally it turns out happy. So I always start with the eyes. So see how my regular gouache blends in. There we go. Now, let me dry. Oops. Are we still on? Okay. Sorry, guys. So my painting, I paint really slow, and it takes, a lot of people has asked me that do you go outside and paint, and my answer is no, because my painting practices are pretty, how should I be? I'm pretty slow, so going out and painting is a little bit difficult for me. As well as I paint flat, so that's another challenge when you go and do plein air. It's a little difficult to go outside and paint. So now this is a regular gouache.
Does the surrounding painting need a certain amount of drying time before you can rest your arm on it?
Not really. So that's another fun thing about the acrylic and watercolor painting. They dry pretty fast. I created base last night and it's pretty dry. Enough that I can work on it, and I put my hand and it's normally fine.
Okay. The second question is, even though you use water-based paint on paper, you don't mask off the white areas. The white area is painted.
White area is either exposed paper. I do love exposing my handmade paper, and I feel like, so I actually pre-stain my paper with tea and coffee to get that a little deeper color, and I like to expose them. So off-white is normally either exposed paper or off-white paint. I can show you. So here it is actually white is the paint. You can see the white is the paint, and if you look at the tree, all the off-white is exposed paper versus the lines are painted with white paint. Yeah, this is even better. So here all the off-white is exposed paper. And the paint here I used is pale lilac is my base.
And you don't need to mask.
No, I don't need to mask it. I don't mask it, any paper. So here is my eye. I think I'm pretty happy with it. So here's my eye. I feel like I'm pretty happy with it. So now I'm going to start moving in the surrounding area. Since the chameleon has a lot of bumpy, lumpy skin, I created the green and now I'm going to paint just like dots. So it creates that, gives that effect of, enhance the effect of bumps. I can see physically. Here he is.
Okay, here's another question. How do you determine the color scheme for your pieces? Is it while you paint in process, or do you make preparatory studies first?
I start with this subject, and the subject is what determines the entire color palette for my piece. I use contrasting colors against the color of my character. So here, in this particular piece, there's so much green because I wanted to give the influence of a little bit of hide and seek, but I kept the background pretty lighter. I often either go really light or dark on that. Yeah, it's when I sit on the while I'm painting, it's just naturally comes to me, and that's how I go for it. However, oftentimes I do have some sort of idea what I'm doing, but I do not work on any studies. It's always directly on the paper or the canvas.
It's another question. Just notice the veins on the leaves to the left of the chameleon. You'll be adding that line work details to all of the leaves, right?
Yes. So there is going to be a lot of detailing that's going to be added to the leaves. For now, it's just the base. I'm going to post the finished painting maybe next week or so. But this is just the base. So I start with the base, and that is a lot of leaves, and my character is in its position. First, I'm going to finish my chameleon, and then I'm going to go in the background and start adding details. And the reason is my perspective to my subject is I'm always standing further back, and that's why for me, I look at the bigger picture. So chameleon is in the tree back there. So there is tree, and then there's a lot of vines going on, growing on it, or sometimes if they are on the ground, there's a lot of weeds. So it's very intricate, and there's a lot of details that's going to go in. But all my paintings, the perspective for them is I'm standing further back and observing them and looking at bigger picture than versus the close-up of my character. So here I wanted to show the different little so here the trees, the leaves is done through acrylic gouache, and you can see how the veins are standing out, versus this is a regular gouache, and you can see how they're blending in to see. That's the difference between acrylic gouache and the regular gouache, and I love to use both the mediums at the same time for my work. So here we go. I'm going to go over and add little details to my work.
One more question. How do you balance conceptualizing so much detail against the bigger picture of the large painting?
To me, the size doesn't play much account. It's how should I say? It's the balancing around the painting. And can you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah. How do you balance conceptualizing so much details against the bigger picture, in quotes, not in bigger picture in terms of size, but the bigger of a large painting? Yeah.
So to me, as I said, I stand further back while I'm working. Like, that's my perspective. And once the character is in place, I start seeing that what would make it more, will help my characters to jump out of the painting, as well as add relevant details to the painting. And that's how I add a little bit bigger greeneries and smaller greeneries to create that dimensionality around the painting. And again, it's magic happens when I'm working on it. And I wish I can give you the technical answer to that, but honestly I don't. It's just it's very intuitive, and it's fun. I don't even think about it. It's just it happens. I feel like it needs a little bit something to make them pop, and I keep adding the details.
Okay, one more question. Do you have a favorite stage of your painting process?
I'm excited to start my painting, and then I'm equally excited to see it finish. So in between, it's the process, but I'm always super excited to start a new painting. Have a lot of ideas in my head, and I just can't wait to start working on it and seeing the finished product hanging in my studio and hanging in my collector's place.
One more question statement. It's interesting that your perspective is far away, but the creation of it is up close.
Thank you. I feel like, so I was thinking about this morning, and I don't know how it came by, but I was working on the chameleon I started working on it this morning, adding leaves, and I was thinking that how, and this is oftentimes asked to me, that why is so intricate, why there's so much detail, like there's no negative space. Yes, this folk art, the folk art itself has the influencing my artwork has no negative space. They were filled with leaves and flowers and geometric shapes, but I was looking closer to it, and I realized that I look things further from far up, but my focus is always my subject matter. So, when I'm looking outside, I see everything, but my vision is always, I'm concentrating on the bird or the deer, and so for me, my subject is center stage, and the rest is around it, to help that narration to that subject. I hope that answered. Sorry. All right. So I'm going to work a little bit more on this, and then the one thing I wanted to ask question is about the fine lines, and I wanted to point, this is technical aspect, but my brush never touches my paper, and that is why they are so precise lines. Like my brush never touches like here, if I make a line, there you go.
Couple of more questions. Your process is unforgiving in that you can't paint over it, as in oils. What do you do if the piece isn't taking shape in the way you envision?
That's a really good question. So one of the thing is, when I'm working on something, or when I decide on working something, I have some sort of vision in my head, and at that point I'm committed to it, and sometimes it doesn't go my way, and I actually leave it alone for sometimes. I have pieces in my studio which are 2 years old, which I started and didn't cooperate it, and it happens like a lot of times. Things just doesn't want to work, and I just leave it alone for sometimes, and try to get back to it after some times, and if it works, it works. If not, then I start a new one. I actually had made a painting a couple of years ago. I wanted to, a lot of my friends are doing, their flower gardens, and I was like so intrigued by that I want to paint flowers, and I started big, and the base color I wanted was lemon yellow, which is very hard to control in watercolor. So I started that, it didn't work. It was all patchy. I redid, I started a new piece, new paper, same painting. It didn't work out. It worked out third time. So sometimes I'm super determined. I'll just keep at it and make it work.
One more question. How has your artwork evolved from when you first began painting? Would you say it is more colorful, more intricate? What has been your biggest areas of artistic growth?
So initially when I started, it was very traditional Indian folk art. It was true to folk subjects. The approach was very folk. And as I started working on it, I started evolving my practices, my applications changed, as well as the subject matter, I would say, was the biggest change. I started, instead of doing the traditional folk art, I started extracting the things from the folk art. Like Indian folk art is very colorful. Indian folk art is very intricate. It's pattern based, art form. And I started taking that and creating my paintings. And now you can see that I paint completely, my subject matter are completely away from the folk art, but the essence is still there. When you see my painting, the color palette is still very vibrant, primary based color palette, and very intricate, but the approach is contemporary, the subject matter is contemporary, the stylization is contemporary, still the pattern, lot of repetition. If you see my work, it's repetitive patterns throughout the painting. Either it's on my paper work or my canvas paintings, you will see the repetition. Like here, there's a constant repetition of the leaves with the subject matter of chameleon, but the approach, so the stylization is still very folksy, the palette is folksy, but the approach and the subject matter has changed to contemporary in this year. All right, do we have any more questions? All right, thank you so much all for joining me. I'll soon post the picture on the comment to see how my chameleon came out, but thank you so much for joining. We have another one coming next month. It's third week of April, so please join us for 5 o'clock club. We have on live Instagram live in the second week of April. So please join us. Thank you for your support and your appreciation. Thank you so much.